Good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the club. We're going to try and start a new style of live stream here. I'm going to be going through and showing you some of the 944s that we have here at the shop. We're not going to go through every one of them each week. We'll just try and stick to a few. But yeah, anyway, today we're going to be looking mainly at this 944 S2 cab. And of course, as always, I'm going to be taking your questions as we go along and answering anything that you have in relation to your project. But glad you guys could join me. Last week I didn't really get to do a live stream. I was on the road, but I tried my best, and we were going through the mountains, so there was a lot of signal going in and out. But I'm glad to be back at the shop this week. And again, glad you guys could join me. J Fusion says hi. Well, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Hope everybody's having a great Sunday. We're going to try and kick this off, keep it a little bit more exciting than normal. But yeah, we've also got Happy Fox here. He says hi, Brent. Well, good afternoon, Happy Fox. And Stuart says hi from the UK. Glad to have you all. So yeah, just the background on this S2. It just came in. I believe the owner just purchased it. I don't know if it had been sitting or not. I have to clarify that with him, but looks like it had been sitting a while. But the belts and everything look good in here. But when we took the air filter off, so let me flip you guys around. So to replace the air filter on the S2s, you have to remove the nose panel here. And it was something that he was thinking about doing himself. But it's not something that, you know, it's not hard to do, but it's tedious. So I told him that we'd go ahead and do it. But once we got it open, there was a big rat's nest in there. And it was just packed with, well, you guessed it, rat droppings and a bunch of just ripped up cotton looking stuff. So we got that out of there and changed the filter. He's probably going to gain about 50 horsepower just from us changing that. And there was a bunch of leaves in here, so I don't know if the car had been sitting, but it definitely been outside at some point. And you can see still got leaves just hanging out. These were old dried leaves. But this car is getting a just complete redo. The chain and pads and everything here were original. So you can see we got all that off. There were some minor grooves in it. Could have lasted a few more years, but you just never know when these things are just going to give up. It's better to go ahead and replace all this stuff while you're in there. So that's what we're doing. We're also going to be doing the clutch on this car. I have no idea. I haven't driven it that much to know if the clutch is actually gone bad, but these did have the rubber centered clutch, so you might as well. Still picking leaves out of here, but you just never know. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, replace the cylinders, new water pump, new belts, reseal the AOS down in there, and he also wants us to take a look at a few issues with the top. But we're going to get these injectors sent out and have those cleaned up. But that's a quick glance at this car. John says, hello, friends. Well, good afternoon, John. Overall, it's a beautiful car. So as he was trying to open this door here, he pulled up on this and broke the lock here. So it's good the owner did that, and it didn't happen on our watch. But we're going to get this replaced. We've got some of the door panels parts removed here, but that speaker down there is aftermarket, and I think it's glued on. So everything's ready to take this off, but for some reason this is not wanting to come off, so we're just taking our time with it. But these shouldn't be too hard to change. But as far as the top, he's missing these little tiny recessed screws here. So replace those. I think he's also missing a screw over there. And then we're going to look into why the top doesn't work electrically. It could be the motors, it could be the cable, the gears. We'll have to dig in there and see what's going on. Typically the way we do these cars is we start with the engine, and then we finish that, and then we move on to the next thing, which would be the clutch, and then we'd get around to this. But since this is just mainly screws, we'll go ahead and get the screws on there while we're doing everything else, and then we'll come back, and then the last thing we'll do is take a look at the roof. That way we don't spread ourselves too thin trying to do everything at once, because it may come to the point where the engine's done, but we're messing with the roof. We got the roof apart, and we're trying to do the clutch, but we got a bunch of other things going on that we don't want to end up, you know, maybe we can't source the part. So at least it'd be something that we have everything else done, and maybe the owner comes and says, well, we'll deal with it another time, and that way he can just decide what he wants to do with it from there. We don't want to get a little overwhelmed trying to just tear the whole car down all at once. Happy Fox says, my fuel pressure drops to 1.7 bar while revving hard, idles around 2, reading 2.5 bar. It's a little low, isn't it? So when revving hard, it's dropping to 1.7 bar, idles around 2 bar. So all my stuff is in PSI, and so I know 2 bar or 2.5 bar is going to be somewhere around 40 PSI. At idle, we usually see about 18 PSI, so that's about 1.2 bar. So 1.7 at while you're revving doesn't seem too bad. The max rating 2.5 bar. So the thing about the regulators is every car is a little bit different, but for the most part, I usually see, and again, I have to do this off the top of my head, so my exact numbers aren't going to be correct, converting them to bar, because I don't really think in bar. I think more in PSI. So around idle, you should see about maybe 1.2 bar with the engine running. With the engine off, you're going to see about 45, 50 PSI, around the 2.5 bar without the engine running. But with it running, you'll probably see around 18 to 20 PSI, again, about 1.2 bar-ish. And 1.7, he's saying, is, yeah, so yeah, you should see, that's a little high for idle, but it's fine. But you're saying that the 1.7's at full revs. That's about right. So you got to think the 2.5 bar that you're expecting is without the engine running, without the injectors firing and stuff. But the pressure itself with the actual engine running is going to be quite a bit lower. So what you're saying sounds about right. But again, we test it with the engine off to see if the fuel pressure regulator has failed. And so we're looking for around 45, 50 PSI or 2.5 bar-ish without the engine on. And then we test with the engine off. Well, we pull the fuel pump fuse or the relay at that point and see if it bleeds down, and we're looking for it to lose pressure. So I mentioned in a few other videos that we had one that was around 40 PSI or about around 2 bar. Looked fine, but as soon as we pulled the fuel pump relay, well, we were jumping it anyway, to make it run without the engine on, as soon as we'd pull that, it would bleed right off. It'd go right down to zero. So I was thinking check valve, because usually when a fuel pressure regulator leaks down, you'll see much higher spikes. You'll see it spike higher, but that's not always the case. In this case, it was the regulator replacing it fixed it. And the other test that we do is with the engine running at idle. I don't ever do it wide open throttle, because a lot of these tests that we're doing, we don't want to build the pressure up too much and a bunch of heat and risk a fire. So our two tests are with the engine off, watching for leak down, and the other one is at idle, just to see what it's like. But so I'm not entirely sure exactly where it should be under full throttle. But keep in mind, full throttle is a little bit different than full load. So my guess is that we're not actually seeing what the damper has done in your test under full load, unless you have it in your car and you're like hitting second gear and you're really putting it through its paces and you've got a gauge in the car, which we don't do all that. We're just trying to see. Typically we can get everything that we need to know from those two things. I hope that helps, but from what I'm seeing, it looks like your pressures are about right. Let's see. Anonymous says, I bet you shop at Home Depot a lot. So actually, I guess the ironic thing here is that the closest hardware store to us is Home Depot. But if I could get rid of this, I would, but it's fine. Looking at that S2 engine there, I had the rocker cover seal replaced. Already leaking after 200 miles at the top left corner. What do you do when it comes to the seals and bolts? Okay, so I guess you're talking about this, we call it the cam cover here. No rockers in here, but it translates. So yeah, basically the only thing you can do here is you just have to be very, very patient with it, because you'll go to put these in, you put them in the cover part and they want to fall out, and you have to do it over and over again. So we take just a little bit of grease, and the grease holds it in there for us. And these corners here always want to fall out, especially this one down here. And like you said, it's leaking from here more than likely. You just got to take your time with it and make sure you get it pressed down. And what we do is, there's going to be bolts in the center here. So there's actually a bolt that goes right in here, and we will tighten it up, just snug it up a little bit, and we'll snug it up back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So if we do a center bolt, we'll come down here and do this bolt, snug it up, then come over here to the top. So basically zigzagging back and forth, top, bottom, come down, bottom, top, bottom, top, bottom, top, just back and forth like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to take the gasket and sort of push it from the outside both directions out. And so you as you know, these little gaskets like to shrink up. So if you start, on this side, you're going to push it this way, and you're going to end up with too much. That can make it bulge on this side. Or this side, if you start over here, so you want to start in the center and kind of just spread it evenly and go back and forth. And there's first time for everything, but since we started doing that anyway, I've never had a problem with it. So you might just need to go in and make sure that it isn't just kind of kinked up somewhere. But yeah, the grease will hold these in, but it won't help you a bit with these, because it's just so heavy and it's just so wonky. So you just have to make sure that you lay it down here and stick your head in there really good and make sure that it's not moved around a little bit. But yeah, we probably installed about 50, 60 of them, and they're going to leak over time, but not in 200 miles. I mean, they're going to dry up and you have to tighten them down again. So anytime you have a fresh gasket going in, so finish up on that thought was once you get it sort of snug down, you're going to come back to this point here and you're going to find that this one in the center, wherever you started here in the center, is going to be loose again. So you're just going to do that again, just kind of snug it down, snug it down, snug it down. And these are only about 6 foot-pounds or maybe 72-inch pound. What would that be? And maybe 3-ish. In metric, you know, so you'll just start out and just like Newton meters, maybe like 3 Newton meters, but don't torque it all the way down to that at first. Just you want it hand tight, and then go back and forth on these, and then come back, do it hand tight again. And then once you get it to where like you finally get this one not loose in the center again, and this is the same kind of thing that you do whenever you're doing the cam tower or a head or the oil pan gasket. All this stuff is about the same, and then you'll come back around and then you can go ahead and torque it down. But I would use that same pattern torquing it down. There's no official torque pattern, but if you start in the center and work your way out, it's pretty much the way to go. Yeah, definitely. If this is 200 miles, it was something got crimped or not installed correctly, but it happens. You just have to take your time with them. There's not a lot of room. Luckily here, we've got everything off and you can see that we've got enough room here. But a lot of times if you're doing this with the intake on or something, it's just really hard to make sure that that gasket goes on there. So when we install them, we try and install them with all this stuff off there. Kenneth says, hello, Brent. Well, good afternoon, Kenneth. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We're just taking a look at this beautiful, it's a 1990 S2 convertible. So we're doing a front engine service on it. We're doing a oil cooler seal replacement, chains and pads, new sensors. Yeah, that's always a good point, is that I mentioned this in my video the week before last, is when I was going over doing the cam housings, that you cannot over torque anything. And Anonymous mentioned, yeah, do not over torque anything. If it's 6 foot-pounds, it's 6 foot-pounds, and 7 foot-pounds or even 7.1 foot-pounds is going to cause all sorts of problems, especially with the cam housing. They call for 15 foot-pounds and you're going to snap your gasket and you're going to be doing it over again. And sometimes with coolant necks like this, you'll get some gaskets they can take the full 13 foot-pounds, and in other times you're going to find that they break at 8, and it's perfectly fine. If you want to just torque these to 8, they're not coming off. 150,000 miles later, these things are still on there. The gasket is what seals it, and you don't have to go crazy torquing this stuff down. Mark says, hello, Brent. I have a small amount of oil on my spark plug on top of the side of the plug. I'm not sure where it's coming from. 84 944 turbo. Okay, so we'll take a look. I believe I have some engines around here. So if you're getting oil, you're talking about coming from around the electrical spark plug boot, I'd imagine. And if you're getting it, so let's take a look here. So All right. So if you're looking down number 2 here, you can see. So this car here, just to preface it, this is a barn find. Not technically, the guy owned it, but he owned it since the 90s or maybe even longer. But it's sat in his barn for 26 years. So since 99. What happened was, and we see this every now and then, he said he was driving his car. This is an 85 and a half. And you'll know, we'll go through 86 and later cars do not have this issue. But with this particular car, you can see that the cable for the throttle does this right here. So I'm pulling on the throttle cable and it comes out right there, and it will, sometimes you'll go to go check your oil and you'll pull this by mistake because the dipstick sits right there. And when you do, it'll sit like that and it'll make the idle really high. And spooked him, so he never drove the car again. So this car sat in the garage since about 1999, more than likely because that right there happened. And but now it's here and it's getting repaired. The gas tank was just full of crud, and anyway, it's going back together. We got to clean a lot of it up. As you can see, it was sitting in a garage, but this was a barn, but it was not climate controlled, as you can see. So we got a lot of cleaning up to do here. And with the number 2 here, if you're getting oil in here, that shouldn't be happening. Essentially, you might have something cracked. The head could be cracked, but I've never seen that, but things do happen. I've seen these, if you guys know Elliot at 944 Barn, he had a race car out there that they put pure water into to race on the track, and it froze and it just split the entire head in half. So I'm not saying that's happened, but there shouldn't be any reason, you know, if the spark plug's tight down in there, if there's oil getting past the seals, the valve seals, or there's just oil getting around the rings, it would only be on the bottom of the spark plug and it would foul them. But from here, there shouldn't be any oil unless something's leaking. This leaks a lot, so more than likely you're going to have a leak here. But I have seen stranger things where maybe the head's cracked and you're getting oil in there. But if you don't see anything up here, then it might be worth trying to inspect this. But I don't know. It's worth mentioning because you never know. Anything can happen on these cars. They're 40 years old. But more than likely, you can see that this car here, even though it's sat in a barn since 1999, it's nice and clean here. And I don't see any reason to reseal this at the moment. You know, I think right now we'll just clean everything up, get a new water pump on, get some new oil cooler seals in there, replace all these seals, new spark plugs, everything. The engine turns over great. You can see I turn it just like that, nice and smooth. We've got some Marvel mystery oil in there because after sitting so long, these rings really do like to seize up. But yeah, let's go back up and see if I'm missing. Okay, Kenneth says, what else should I buy for a head job? Head gasket, exhaust studs, red silicone, 89 Turbo S. Okay, so skip the red stuff. Just get new. If you're going to take the exhaust off, well, you got to take the exhaust off. But yeah, just make sure your headers are straight and just put gaskets on there. We don't use any RTV here. Every now and then there's something we'll use some RTV on. So if these studs here, they snap out of the water pump, and we'll go in and weld them and get the studs out. And if there's some like little marring here, like sometimes you just can't help it, we can't get this block flush again. We like to pull the engines, but you got to be realistic. It gets to be a huge job trying to do all that. So if we have a little bit of, we don't necessarily tear this up, but you know, that heat will get in there. So we'll use some RTV very seldomly and lightly around this area, but that's about the only place. If you're just taking the head off, just put some new gaskets on there. You're going to be good. So head gasket kit, and you should be good to go unless you're doing the water pump and everything. But yeah, that's about it. But the gaskets are going to come in the head gasket set. So you're going to get all these gaskets that go for the exhaust, and you're going to get the intake, the cam housing gaskets. I think I've got a full set of gaskets for headset over there. I might just take you guys through it later. Let's see. So Mark says with his car that has the oiler in there, it's not smoking, it's not dark. Yeah, I would definitely just check up here to see if anything's running down. Again, are you seeing it? Another question I have is, are you seeing it go on top of the spark plug boot or when you pull the spark plug boot out? So that's going to be two different things too. If it's coming and it's sitting below the boot, then yeah, you've got some weird stuff going on somewhere. Maybe a crack in here, but if it's just coming down and pulling, I mean, also keep in mind that fuel can look like oil as well and could be an injector leak. We see a lot of leaky injectors. Kenneth, I also thought I'd mention that if you have coolant in the oil is not always a head gasket necessarily. It's also the oil cooler. So the oil cooler seals do fail on the turbos as well. I hear a lot of people say that they don't. They do. The same failures do, and I hear all sorts of stuff that say that, oh, well, the oil pressure is higher, so the oil will get into the coolant, but the coolant won't get into oil. It's not true. It depends on which seal it is, and a lot of times it's just better, like, do a coolant pressure check. The pressure tests are, take it somewhere and they'll probably do it for you, but you might sometimes people might charge you more than the whole thing does. So put a pressure tester kit on here, push it through, see what's going on. If there's coolant getting to the oil now, then you're gonna have an oil cooler issue, more than likely. So these absolutely do fail on turbos. We see it quite a bit. So while you have the head off, it never hurts to do the head job. If it's an original head, after 40 years, the gaskets, you don't want to be left with your pants down somewhere, you know. Go ahead and do the head gasket on a 40-year-old car. We're probably going to go ahead and do this too. I mean, it just makes sense. But definitely check into that. Don't want you to get all this back together and it turns around and you had an oil cooler issue all along. But the good thing about the turbo oil coolers is that it's just two little rings and it just bolts right back up. And Jason says it looks like a straight six. Yeah, it's about as big as a straight six, but it's a inline four. Just a big inline four. I had coolant in my oil. Turbo was the oil cooler gaskets. Yep. Yep. It happens quite a bit. This was decades ago, but I remember decades ago people were like, the turbos don't fail like this, and it's like, well, I've seen 10 of them, so it does happen, and more than often it's not the head gasket, it's the oil cooler seal. So yeah, just something to keep in mind. If you're going to be doing all that, it never hurts to do a head gasket, especially at the age of these cars. Let's be real. I see the gaskets just leaking all over the place without any damage done to the engine. They just rot. They're just old, and so it's not a bad idea to have them done. If we don't see anything that's like too dire, we don't worry about it. But Yeah, exactly. So Anonymous says gaskets aren't meant for hard pressure 24/7 with turbo. Keep up the oil and the maintenance in the car. Yeah, exactly. But we are talking about 40-year-old gaskets that have deteriorated. You never know if someone has put coolant in there that's reacting with it, if it's had water in it sometime and it's just full of crud. And some of this pink stuff that Porsche uses now doesn't play well, especially that orange stuff. Like people put a lot of Dex Cool in these cars, and if you don't get all the green out, it can sludge it up, and it likes the corrode stuff. It's just not meant for older cars and the older technology stuff. So when we do stuff here, we switch entirely to the blue. It's compatible. If you don't get all the green out, it's perfectly fine. We do drain everything out that we can, but you can't get everything out of the heater core. So we just make sure that everything is as clean as possible, drained as possible, but you put the blue in there and it doesn't matter. It's the same sort of stuff, but it's a 5-year, 150,000 mile stuff. And that's exactly right. I always use the chemicals called for the job and never just random stuff. But people do, and there ain't nothing you can do about it once it's already in there, other than get it out of there and hope for the best. But we get a lot of stuff that comes in with Dex Cool, and that stuff stains everything, and it just rusts stuff up. It corrodes some of the gaskets, and so it's a mess. And if you don't get all the green out, it'll coagulate. So yeah, even the new Porsche stuff, I see that quite a bit. It seems to work fine, but it's just not really meant for our cars. And so John says, I was surprised to find the power steering bottle weeping where the hoses are clamped. So the bottle itself are just, now this is a issue, as you can see in this car here. It's rather clean, but power steering loves to, not only that, but you got a little breather up here. See that little hole? It's a little breather. And it just mists nasty stuff. But these hoses look to have been replaced at some point. It could be wrong. It could just be a low mileage car, but we see this all the time on these cars where the hoses have just rotted over time. Power steering fluid and hydraulic fluid, well, this stuff is ATF, but automatic transmission fluid, hydraulic fluid in general is just some nasty stuff, and you've got to have the right hoses. And even if you have the right hoses 40 years later, they're gonna leave the chat, so to speak. So it's always good. These hoses look fantastic. They could be 40 years old, they could be 10 years old, but they look fantastic. But it's a rare sight to see anything like that. We always see them leaking, so especially that one that runs straight to the pump. So it just never hurts to replace those. They're very cheap. I would check that first, but yeah, we get a lot of these reservoirs here. So we'll order a kit and they'll come with a brand new reservoir or something, and we have a lot of them laying around. We don't have to change them very often. It's usually just the hoses. So hopefully it's just your hose. If it is, then you know it is this. These are also fairly cheap. Getting the original ZF ones are a little harder to find, a little bit more expensive, but you don't necessarily have to have that. There's a filter in there, so it is recommended that you just go ahead and change this whole unit when you change any of the hoses. Anonymous says, do you use a vinegar bath through your engine? Depends on what we're doing. So if it's a flush like this, then we actually have a chemical we run through there. And for this engine, it's got the green stuff. Green stuff looks brand new. On this would probably just get a vinegar flush like you're saying. But some of the stuff that we get in, sometimes you'll see rust on these. It's rusty from probably running straight water in these things, probably tap water. And so what we'll do with those types of engine, I should say, is we use that and it cleans up all the rust. It's made by Evapo-Rust. And if you guys, I'm not paid to say this, but if you guys have never used Evapo-Rust, it's like a lifesaver. So when I started doing this stuff like 10 years ago, I guess it could have been around then, but I didn't know about it. And we used to have to sandblast every little bolt. And nowadays we just soak a lot of this stuff. We soak the brake calipers, all this stuff, and it's like brand new. Yeah, we flush the inside, but we don't use straight water. We use a chemical for it because everything's distilled. Anything that goes in uses distilled water. But oh yeah, there's people that run just there's nasty stuff in some tap waters. Not everybody's tap water is nasty, but yeah, there's some nasty tap water out there. So one thing I could probably go through one day, I think that I'll do a specific video on like bleeding the coolant systems on these cars to see. You know, I've been doing this for 20 something years. One thing you never want to do is open a coolant system that is hot. And I'll see people say, yeah, just get the engine up to temperature and open the bleeder screw. Never do that. That's the worst idea in the world. Don't ever open a hot coolant system. You got to bleed the coolant before it's ever even warmed up. But the other thing I want to talk about in one of these videos is, you know, you hear people say, you got to use the phosphate-free stuff. You got to use the phosphate. Well, that wasn't the biggest problem is that people were putting tap water, like very hard tap water in their cooling systems back then, and that does not go well with aluminum blocks. So it wasn't the phosphates in there necessarily. It doesn't help. It reacts with those two. But here in the US, it wasn't as big of a problem as it was over in Europe. You would see a lot of them. And we see it, but it's nowhere near as bad. But it was the tap water causing a lot of that, and you just pull it out and it just looked like you could just grab shovelfuls of like whatever that stuff is. It's just calcium basically. And so always use distilled water. And you don't have to buy the 50-50 stuff. You can mix it yourself with just some distilled water and you're gonna be fine. But also, like, don't be opening the coolant system when it's hot. That's a terrible idea. So one of these videos, we'll go through all this stuff. We'll talk about what you need to do to flush the system, and we'll go through and we'll talk about what to put in your cooling system, because it's kind of gotten a little bit less of a topic. But I remember when I first started out with these cars, it's like, you can't use this, you can't use this, you got to find phosphate free, you got to do this and you got to do this. And it's like, well, true, you should be doing all that, but it's not. People get like completely a little bit overboard on this, and then especially when they start saying like you got to blow into your expansion tank here, and you need to open this when it's hot. It's like these are dangerous things. Don't do that. So we'll go through them. We'll go through the cooling system one time. Each car is different. I probably won't lay out like how the cooling systems work or anything, but we'll go through and we'll just talk about how to flush them. Make sure your hoses are tight. Like, that's kind of tricky too. Specifically this hose, that goes here. I tried to flip the camera, it's still looking at me. But this hose that comes off the water pump here, that one's kind of tricky. This one over here is not so bad, but it also causes a thing. So you can see that someone's pinned this one up against the body there. You don't want that hose clamp there. So just little things like that. Anonymous says, I had a guy bring in a truck using 30-gallon drum pushing water to get to my house. Oh my God. That's wild. Yeah, I believe it. I've seen some crazy stuff like that. What is it just rolled in? You guys ever seen that stuff? Some pretty wild stuff. I'm fortunate that most of the time, like with these cars, they're a little bit dirty, but there's nothing like crazy rusted on them. There's nothing too bad. We see some broken pieces here and there, but like for the most part, everything can just be replaced. But but for the most part, like we're very fortunate in what we do. Like, you know, nothing too wild. We get the brakes that came off that barn find car. We're probably gonna have to replace those. The little rods had seized completely in there, just welded themselves up with rust. So, but you know, we have a ton of that stuff. So we're just selling some that are in just the same shape, but a little bit that aren't seized up. So, so J Fusion asked, "Is the steam mod vent worth it?" I mean, so that's going to depend on if you're having issues. So I've always heard that there's a pocket of air that gets stuck back there, and I'm not going to get into it. I don't. We do modded cars, but we're not doing like that heavily modded cars. So we're doing cars that come in that with about 150 horsepower and they're leaving with about 300 horsepower. Sometimes we get some that are pushing a little bit more than that, but it's few and far between. Have I seen anything personally from that? No, I mean, there's ways to get air out of there, but if it is the way they say, then, you know, it's not up to me to say whether or not you should, but, you know, it's not really particular anything we need. A lot of times these guys want things a certain way. They either want their engine back the way it was, a little bit better than the way it was. And, you know, sometimes we get those, we just need this changed, and we take it off, clean it up, put it back on. Other times it's a full-on rebuild, but we haven't seen anything to necessitate that. If you're, you know, these are probably going to be like fully racetrack cars running high boost and stuff, then yeah, it's possible. I can see that, but otherwise, I mean, air bubbles are going to move around. Go this way, the air bubble is going to run this way, there's got to be a way that at some point, like going up a hill at an angle, that the air bubble is going to finally eventually make it to the high spot. So I mean, I haven't done any research into it, but there you go. I'm just keep my that's all I'd say about it. I don't think for a street driven car that it's going to necessitate anything like that, but so Lewis says, hello, my 84 has the heater hose blocked since I do not need it in Puerto Rico. Does this change the coolant flow and make the system worse? No. No, if you don't need the heater in Puerto Rico, then no. I would block off both sides of it, though. I wouldn't have like heat going into it and not being able to return out of the head, but I don't see how that would matter either way. But nah, no, doesn't affect anything at all. I've seen I think my dad one time bought a Ford F-150 and didn't have any heat, asked me to look at it. We get in there and I look and I'm like, the hoses are disconnected and capped off. And I'm like, well, this can't be a good sign. So spend like 18 hours pulling the dash out, and we get in there like the whole heater core is just rusted out. So about a 4-day endeavor to replace that thing. But yeah, someone had it capped off, and it, you know, it's going to drive just fine. Not having heat in your car is not going to affect anything, but eventually you might want heat, but I guess you wasn't in there. So yeah, so Anonymous says you're there to make them happy and keep them loyal. Yeah, the best I can. Yeah. I mean, that's the idea. Like we try and do a little bit of everything because nobody's really working on these cars at a full scale anymore. There are some guys, I think, out in California and stuff that are doing some of the stuff that we do. And, but there's a wide spectrum of things that we do. So, it goes a little bit more involved with that. We got full-on restorations, brand new interior, brand new seats, dashboards, everything. So it's just all up to what the owner wants. This says perfect. Thanks. Keep the channel alive. I appreciate it so much, guys. It's because you who are here, man. So yeah, I just love being in contact with you guys and helping out. So ever since I got the new shop, we have been so swarmed with cars that I haven't really had any time to make any videos, as you can see. That's just scratching the surface of some of the stuff that we've got here. I've got even more outside, and I've got several guys working on everything every day. But you know, every day I get another email. It's like, hey, why you got my car? Can you go ahead and do this? And I'm more than happy to do it. But it gets the running away sometimes. But so when you got like 20 cars and something starts out easy and you think you're going to get it out next week, sometimes I'm, and I hate to do this, but like when someone wants their air conditioning fixed in the wintertime, and so we just had this happen to one car that we had here. It's warmed back up now, so I feel terrible, but the switch wasn't working, and like at some point somebody had glued all the knobs onto the cover. I think it's the switch itself, and I would go in and replace that, but I'm like, I'm gonna break every single thing in here, and if this can wait till spring when we'll have a little bit more time, then we'll worry about it then. But yeah, right now I'd say go enjoy the car, and you know, after having it rebuilt, and we'll get to it in the spring. But the AC is charged, it's holding pressure and everything, but just for some reason the switch wouldn't work, and we're gonna have to just probably jackhammer that thing out of there, and that's just not, it's not worth doing in the winter time type deal. So move on to the next thing, and then, you know, that's work to do later. But it is what it is. But so we do our best, but sometimes you gotta kind of, you know, cut your losses, and some of that stuff there, you kind of go, all right. So Anonymous says, I know the feeling. I just put a 3260 steel building, keep up with everything. Oh man, yeah, we are out of space here. I'm thinking about getting a we're looking at a huge space now, but I think it's overall somewhere, I really need like 30,000 square feet, but that ain't gonna happen, especially not in the city. But we're looking at probably about 10,000 square foot, and I'm hoping to bring the paint back inside. So I used to paint the cars when I had a little bit more time, but now I don't have any time, so we farmed that out. We used to do the seats here in-house, and I don't have time to do that anymore. So it's getting to the point where we just focus on the stuff we got to get done and leave it at that. Oh, that's awesome. So he says that building cost $25,000 to put it up with my buddy. That is awesome. I unfortunately wouldn't have time to put it up myself. I won't have time to put it up myself, so I'd have to pay somebody to come out and put it up. But it's definitely, you know, that's the other thing is, like, not to get into too much, but you know, you're paying a lease and you're paying for a house, and it's like, why don't you just buy land and have a house and a shop on the same? That's what I used to have, but it's way cheaper that way. So I agree. Is just buy a big shop, and I'd still have to pay someone to do it, but I know a guy that did that, and his shop is beautiful, so I might have to do that. That's honestly the way to go. Stuart says, is changing the seals in the AC compressor difficult in the 84 model? Not too bad at all. Basically, I've got 45 compressors around here. So first of all, get it on a vacuum. Well, if it's still charged, I should say, don't vacuum it out if it's still charged. But some people use dye. I'm not totally against dye. I won't dye a car if it's like we know the system's leaking down, because if the compressor's original, 99% of the time, not always. I have seen people put wood screws up through the evaporator core, mounting an amp or something back in the 90s. But yeah, you never know what you're going to find. But if it's an original compressor and everything looks good, it's more than likely the seal on the front, and that may be what you're talking about rather than the seals. Now that I think about it a little bit more, you're probably talking about the seals inside the compressor. Honestly, it's if you're seeing leaks outside, you're at the sealed joints, then that's not bad. But if it's the compressor itself, they're cheap. Just go on eBay. There's people, especially with the early cars, you won't find rebuilt, reman ones from Denso, but with the early cars, you can go on eBay and find some that someone had rebuilt, and it's just cheaper. Just save the headache. Just save the headache. Anonymous said, it took us 4 days, no machine, just manpower and impacts. So awesome. That's not bad then. 32 by 62. That is pretty good. J Fusion says, what is your average turnaround time on a car? So these cars are 40 years old. Let's just preface it with that. There are a lot of people out there. I mean, you can get a lot of the parts, and there are a lot of people selling parts for these cars, but you know, still takes you a week to get the parts. You got to figure out what you got. So with this car here, with this S2, we pretty much know ahead of time what we're gonna have, and I keep some parts in stock, but we go right through those parts. So I can buy 20 head gasket sets and we'll go right through them, and we're picking from them and everything else. So, you know, in a week's time, we might have 2 or 3 head gasket sets left, and of those 3, there might be 1 complete one. That's we're pulling stuff for other stuff. So yeah, I try to, before the car comes, have a list of things that I know we're going to need right off, and it never sticks to that plan because sometimes you need the knock sensors. The knock sensors fell apart, and it's like, well, we didn't think of that. Okay, well, now we've got to see if we have any in stock. Do we have any stock? No, now we're waiting a week for that. This isn't stuff that we can necessarily run to advance, and we have Worldpac too. So with Worldpac, we can get a lot of stuff the same day. Sometimes, a lot of stuff, I'll say, we can get some stuff the same day. So we need a clutch cylinder, we might get that same day. We need power steering hose, we might get that same day. But there are a lot of these parts we're waiting weeks for. So the flip side of that is that with some of this stuff, we're fabricating stuff. Either we need a new part, let's say for instance the balance shaft cap broke. Well, we have a ton of those, but we might not have the exact one that we need because they change them through the years. And I'm not talking about the cover, but the cap here that goes over this right there. So we got 50 of these, but this one down here is worn out too, you know. So now we got to order one. So we're waiting, you know, sometimes we can get it overnight, sometimes we can't. Sometimes we can't find one. There's oil cooler things that we just can't get them. So on top of like rare, hard to find parts, if the injectors for this S2 go out, we might be able to find some on eBay, but if it's an S, you're not finding any. You're just pure out of luck. You'll never find them. So that car might sit here for 6 months waiting for us to find injectors. So in all, an average car, like, there's nothing that comes in and out in a day, we'll put it that way, because most of the stuff that the guys are coming in and getting takes several months, from fuel tank flushes to, you know, gas tanks, and then we're fabricating things. It's yeah, it's not a, it's, that's the thing, is like 40-year-old cars, we want these guys to be able to get in them and drive them and enjoy them every day. So we're constantly looking for stuff that is gonna fail, that we can, or is we're going to be able to fix, that kind of stuff. Let me come down here. So this is another thing. Now, this isn't such a big deal, but this is something that we find sometimes. I might have already thrown it away. Of course I would, because I wanted it, but the sprocket that was on this car was just completely destroyed. So, of course, we keep brand new sprockets in stock. Well, that's a crank sprocket, but you get the idea. Here's one. We keep them in stock just for that reason. But between never knowing what you're going to find in a 40-year-old car and how much stuff people have hacked up and destroyed and damaged, to fabricating stuff, to waiting on specific parts we got to find, and having to wait for the stuff to come in because it's just not down the street. Yeah, it takes, I would say, 3 months, because we comb through the cars. We want to make sure we find everything that we can. So Happy Fox says, I just found the 4 Bosch injectors for the early ones. Yeah. Yeah, I think you can still find early ones, late ones, and they're always mismatched too. I was looking at an eBay ad the other day. It said that these work for the S2s and the turbos, and I'm like, they might, but they got different part numbers. They had the turbo part number, and they look the same. So the S2s, and the turbos all are green cap injectors, but they all have different part numbers and different flow rates. So we just had an S2, a 944S in here. We got another one here as well, but one just went home, and we got this car together and we put new injectors in there. I don't know where the owner had gotten the injectors, because I didn't have that conversation with them. They were just the injectors that were already in the car. Fired it up, and it just kind of sputtered. It ran, now I idle fine, but as soon as and if you drove it, it was okay, but if you eased on the gas, it would sputter. And so I finally had a call with them. I said, gone through the car, everything drives fine, but it's kind of sluggish when you ease onto the gas, and I'm wondering if you have the original injector somewhere. And he did. And I asked him, because there was no part number on the injectors he gave us, I asked him where he got them, and he said that he got them off eBay. I looked at the listing, and they were for a late 944, but not for an S. And long story short, send his injectors off, get them rebuilt and cleaned up, put his in there. Car runs beautifully now. So a lot of times these listings will say things, but they're not true. So with the S, I think you can still find S2s. I hadn't looked. I hope it doesn't come to that. This car was running and driving beautifully, other than it being packed full of rat's nest in the intake and leaves. But yeah, but it runs and idles fine. So we'll send these off and get these cleaned up, and hopefully it doesn't ever come to that. But yeah, I think the early injectors are still available, and I definitely think that the late injectors are definitely available new. I see a lot of turbo injectors. I one time bought some of the early injectors for a car, and it didn't run well. So I'd sent them off, and they were cheap Chinese injectors, but it's all I could find. Sent them off, and the guy brought me back, and he was like, yeah, these are just full of glue, and they're not real. They were not real injectors. They were just a bunch of random things thrown together that kind of looked like injectors. So threw those away, and I didn't try and buy any more after that. But I did buy some turbo injectors on eBay, and I had some good luck with them. I liked them, and they were pretty cheap. But So Anonymous says, I don't know what state you're in, but my Snap-on fuel company has a fuel injector cleaning kit. I used to send mine out, but the machine is a game changer. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm in North Carolina. But there's a guy up the road from me that does them, and he does a good job, but he doesn't rebuild them. So I send them to a place that actually and I just found another guy, but if they're leaking from the body's cracked and it happens way too much. I just threw away 4 turbo injectors. They just throw them away. But I did find a guy that said, no, we can fix those. So we're going to try that. That's a little bit too much, unfortunately, too much time that we don't have to try and rebuild them. Stuart says, can I use the 87 later injectors 158? I would not. They have a different impedance. So I believe the later injectors are a higher impedance, and it won't run right. Same, I think they put out about the same fuel levels, but the computer won't know what to do with them. Oh, awesome, yeah. I was just down there. We went to Pawleys Island, 2 or 3 weeks ago. So you're not too far from us. Yeah, what time is it, guys? All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you all coming out and hanging out. I usually do these for about an hour. I think this is a good stopping point, and I appreciate y'all guys coming and hanging out again. And hopefully we'll have this thing done next week. Yeah, I'll have some more stuff for you to see next week. We got some exciting stuff coming up. But again, y'all guys have a great week. Thanks for coming out, and we'll see you next time.